Hey, this is Josh from Osmosis Pharmacy Test Prep. Today we're going to go over equations. Equations is real simple. It sounds a lot more complicated and it looks more complicated than it actually is. Equations is just another way of saying that two things are equal. So when I write 5 equals 5, now it doesn't look like an equation, but it is. It's saying that 5 is equal to 5, which we all know that. But if I were to write 5 plus 2 equals 2 plus 5. That is also an equation, and that also is equal to each other. But what gets a little complicated is when we get equations that have what's called unknowns. And that's when we throw in problems like 5x equals 2 plus 7. That's where it gets a little complicated, is when we start throwing in some of these, what's called an unknown, and it's called variables. And that's what makes equations look a little scary sometimes. We're going to go over that today, and that's what we're going to tackle today. Is before we go over most of these problems in the workbook that we have to memorize, all these equations, we're going to figure out how to work these problems. So let's take an example. Say we were having a party and we had $100 to spend on party favors. And you had your friends coming over and you wanted to spend a max of $5 per friend. How much could you spend on each friend if you only had $100 to spend on party favors? Well, you say, Josh, that's easy. You just divide 100 by 5. And you get 20 friends. You can invite 20 friends. Right? Is that how you did that? Well, let me throw this at you. What if you wrote it like this? 5x equals 100. What if I told you that says the same thing? 5 is the $5 that you want to spend per friend, and the $100 is the total that you want to spend, and x is the number of friends. Okay, so we got this math problem. 5x equals 100, and that's how you read it. Would read it. So what we're going to do to get x by itself, because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to figure out how many friends we can invite, right? Because that's what the original problem was. So to keep these equal, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get rid of the 5 over here. So what can we do on this side of the problem to get rid of this 5? Well, what we can do is can we add a 5, subtract a 5, multiply a 5, or divide by a 5 to get rid of 5? So the only thing that we can do is divide by 5. Because if you divide 5 by 5, you're left with 1. And you're left with 1x, which is the same thing as x. Because x times anything is itself, is that number. So you're left with that. But, key thing to remember when you're working with equations, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Why? Because this equal sign right here. Because remember when I told you earlier that the equation is saying that something is equal. So if you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other side. So you have to divide this side by 5 as well. And look, 100 divided by 5. X equals 20. It's the same answer. Now, yeah, it looks a little longer than what you did in your head for the same problem or the same answer. But when you have a little longer problem, like we'll take one from a future video about temperature conversions. When you have, let's take the temperature conversion, 9C equals 5F minus 160. So that's 9 times the temperature in Celsius is equal to 5 times the temperature in Fahrenheit minus 160. Now, if the body's temperature, normal temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's going to go right here. And you plug it in here. So now you're only left with one unknown. And that's another key factor, is that you have to be left with one. A lot of these equations are going to have more than one unknown, but in the problem, somewhere it's going to give you all but one of the unknowns. You just got to know where to plug in those unknowns to leave you just with one. So what you're going to do is you're going to plug it in into the problem where it fits. So if it tells you that the body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to plug it in where the F. Or if it tells you the body is so-and-so degrees Celsius, you would have plugged it in here and left Fahrenheit blank. So this one's real easy. We don't have to do all this complicated stuff. All we have to do is multiply this out. And so when we calculated this out, 5 times 98.6 is 493. Oops. Just pull everything down. Just do one step at a time. You don't have to get all fancy and do multiple steps at once. Just do everything one step at a time. Remembering your order of operations. So multiplication comes first before subtraction. And then you're going to subtract. So 493 minus 160 is 333. But see, we're still stuck with C over here attached to its 9. Now what are we going to do to get C by itself? That's right, we're going to divide by 9. Because that's going to give us 1C, or C. And then it gives us 37. And that's your answer. So 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit is equal to 37 degrees Celsius. That you will have plenty more practice with equations in future videos, and if you have any more questions, you can come back to this video and watch how we did these equations. If you have any more questions, please ask us in class. Again, thank you for choosing Osmosis Pharmacy Test Prep.